Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, and welcome to Day 9 Daily, number 700, and I forgot the exact number again, where we learn to be a better gamer. First things first, let me do something important. I just ate pizza, so I'm sure there's remnants of pizza within, on, and around my face. Also, I had to skedaddle home to get here, and the apartment wasn't properly air-conditioned because I forgot to leave on the air conditioner when I left today. So you're seeing a glisten on the face. You're also seeing a little bit of red, and I don't know why. I think my camera's driver's updated. But the important thing is that I appear flush to you, because today was a hard day. Maybe. I don't think it was a hard day. It felt hard. It was a day that felt hard, where my brain was trying to poop out productivity, and I didn't have mental laxatives with my breakfast. I don't know what it was, but it was tough to get out. Another exciting news. Get this. Get this. The tummy medication that I was taking to fix my tummy, the side effects of it feel a lot like problems in the tummy. So when I finished the course of my medication, all my symptoms went away. And that seems weird. Now, as someone who you would not call a doctor, let me just say that seems odd that that's how some medicines work. That you might get a headache medication whose side effects include headaches. But my stomach medication's side effects were, in fact, gassy bloating and distension of the bowels. But once we stopped taking that medicine, it apparently did its thing, which means that today I get to do the following topic. We will make it through with our sweaty red face and with our haggard hearts and inspired minds. Flash versus Snute. We watched God, aka Flash himself, play up against Zest in a daily that was a week ago, I think? I don't know when it was, but it was something like that. We did it in the past, and it was great. We looked at Flash, how nifty he was. Today we were originally going to do Starbow, but that's being bumped back a little later, because I didn't have enough time to prepare today, because it was a hard day, and I didn't want to do a shitty job. If I'm doing Starbow only twice or so, I better do a good job. So I want to make sure it's a good job. So I figured rather than do a game that I'm unfamiliar with, the Starbow mod, or I should say that I have limited familiarity with, Flash vs. Snute is a series that I wanted to look at because I think that it showcases a lot of cool stuff from both sides. Now, because I've spent such a long time in an intro, I'm going to go straight into the game and begin doing my talkitude here. Is the sound enabled? Yes. Damn, I'm good. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That's what I'm talking about. Oh god, I messed up another thing. Options, controls, confine mouse cursor off, accept, options, controls, disable mouse scroll. Alright, excellent. Super duper, excellent. Travis, wished you happy birthday yesterday. Doing it again. Happy birthday again. Now, in many of the games that you'll see out of Flash and out of Snute, they're games that you would describe as standard. And I know we all love to take time to be like, oh my god, Flash is God. He is a god. Oh, everything that he touches is divine and holy. And I once heard he literally parted water. As much as that is great, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about Snute, who I think has had a very odd reputation, where people increasingly call him amazing, but he's often just called standard, that he just does a lot of by-the-book stuff well. You'll sometimes see him switch up strategies, and it's very easy to look at historical Snute and to say, yes, but he does the standard sorts of all-ins and switch-ups. Snute in this series, and I hope that what you'll start to notice from Snute in many of his series, is that he does some very unique things. And he's done unique things for a long time. It's just never talked about as much. So what we're going to see out of Snute, though, is the kind of uniqueness that I think is the hardest kind of uniqueness. Unique plays that exist because Snute has practiced them to death and it is a style that is solid. It is a style that maybe in a year people will call standard. Most of the time when someone is unorthodox, they are referring to players who do very weird early game builds, whose biggest purpose is to take people by surprise. Really weird, funky compositions or attack moves or plays. I'm going to adjust also my focus at this point because it's looking really odd. What? Alright. Seems good. Yeah, it's normally people who do weird things in opening game or mid-game, but what we tend not to see is, or excuse me, it tends to be weird builds in the early game, people label as unorthodox, or totally different mid-games. People refer to the complete alienness of something as grounds for calling this unorthodox. But what we're going to see out of Snute is a style that very much so resembles standard, with Swarm Host brought into the equation. Most of the time you see Ling, Baneling, Mutalisk, but Snute we're going to be seeing transition to just some Swarm Host later. Flash we're also going to see de-emphasizing the Mine. Not a completely different revolutionary thing, but something noteworthy, especially given that the Mine has recently been buffed, and that's what most people are thinking about focusing on doing all that. So in this part 1, we're going to watch just this one single game on merry-go-round. And the start we can go through pretty quickly. Flash does the usual get a Reaper, get a Reactor, get an Expansion. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Snute does something a little cute. He goes for a pool that is not what you'd call a fast pool. This was 14 or 15. I didn't look at the exact number, but you can do roughly the same moves with 14 and 15 in this spot. And then he expands. He expands second. If you look at what a Zerg's typically going to see, it's a lot of comfort. A lot of distance between these bases that makes it hard to do cheeses, so you can get away with an early expand. But I like the fact that we're seeing Snute do these cute little plays like this, because this can often just wreck an opponent immediately, and Zerg is not really that behind. So here is one of these plays that I freaking love, because it's not a grossly different strategy. This is still standard Zerg. You still get your extractor at basically the same time. But you can really mess up an unsuspecting Terran player. So great. See some really cool stoof with Snute. And out of Flash, we similarly see this usual quick play to go get out Hellions. Now, a sacrifice that you will often make if you do this kind of play as Flash is, or excuse me, one of the moves that a lot of times you can do as Flash in this spot is to just hurry up and get the command center, and notice that there's no Hellions building. This has been a Hellion-free zone. What are the Hellions supposed to do? Control space to help you get your expansions up. There's no expansion up. There's not a lot of need for the Hellion right now. Eventually we'll have more need for the Hellion. But Zerg is not taking the third base right away. And very cool move from Flash to have waited this long to build the Hellions. Now see, this is the same thing we talked about in Flash versus Zest. This isn't crazy different. There's not wildly different units. In fact, if you came in the room right now, you might say, huh, that's a little bit late of a command center, but whatever, he's doing the usual Hellion, he's doing the usual get stim, yeah, this is the usual stuff at standard, and you just ignore the rest of the interesting clues here. But again, this got denied, absolutely no Hellions built to establish 3 command centers quickly. Very slight cool play. Another thing that we're going to see throughout this series is Flash's monitoring of the third bases. I've said this so many times, and Flash is going to actually provide some praxis, which is a word you need to look up in Merriam-Webster, because I recently learned it, so I'm going to use it. Praxis, P-R-A-X-I-S. Flash is the praxis of that statement. Flash is going to aggressively scout the third. Many strategies that Zerg do are based on the third base timing. If there's no third base, Zerg might be all in. If there is a third base, Zerg can't be all in. And 6 minutes is the trigger point for that. I want you to be very aware of this. As we see in production, indeed, Roach Warren, Zergling speed, Extractor going down. This is not a genteel Zerg intending on getting a third base. This is an aggro play. Everything on Flash's side of things screams Standardo. We've gotten a chance to zoom in a bit. We see that that's not quite true. So here Flash should be suspecting something, and indeed has the friendly Hellions off to monitor. Alright. 7 minutes, double engineering base. Same old, same old. If you're ever behind, focusing on upgrades is a great thing to do. Can't attack because you have to stay defensive, so you may as well get those upgrades up. Snute gets scouted out, he gets sniffed by Flash, who snuffs out the strategy. I'm going to zoom forward a little bit here, because this is the pretty typical stuff. One thing that I love about Snute is that he is doing this, what you might call a little bit of a typical early pressure build, with Roaches and Banelings and Zerglings, oh my. But he's expanding behind this. And one thing we're going to be monitoring is what's going on up in this production tab. What are expected pieces that you should know? Build your Roaches first, since they're slow. Build the Lings second, since they're fast. Some early Lings are okay to turn into the Banelings. Don't build the Baneling nest too soon. Yada yada yada. Babada babada babada. Flash building the wall off at the front that we could go into detail exploring, but we're not going to in the interest of time because we have 5 games we want to cover in today's show. Flash is doing some expected moves, just trying to stay alive as best he can, versus this. But the first person that I want to be looking at in this is Flash right at the moment of this. Flash is still getting the starport and the extra barracks. Nothing too broad happening. Snute, we're going to be the one we're looking at in the course of this battle. Snute's trying to bust in, he's trying to deal damage. Mines, being amazing, are a lot better at holding off these all-ins. Snute is continuing to send floods of Zerglings up to try to pick off the SCVs that we're going to be targeting, and you can see them starting to fall. You can see 2 workers killed off at the start of this fight, but that will change over time. More Zerglings getting produced. And actually, let me go ahead and select this barracks, just so we have a reference point. Snute isn't going to break this easily. It's target firing down SCVs and that. But there's a moment here where if you look up at the top side, you're starting to see transitions away for Snute. What the hell happened to cause him to do this? We're going to rewind a minute and take a look at during the battle, because there needs to be that moment where you are aware that it's time to give up on pressuring. Now, by any measure, Snute did well in that attack. But here's the first important thing to notice. Snute is, after these Banelings, going to spend no gas. Why? So that way when Snute stops trying to win in this fight, he has lots of gas to allow him to transition. This is true for pretty much any race, that if you are gonna win, you can just continue to flood with only mineral units and buy yourself more time, or buy yourself more resources to do a transition. So here's the attack going on, we're starting to kill some stuff. I don't mind this round of Zerglings getting produced, some extra ones get produced in a second here. But we're starting to see the important breakthrough units falling. Alright, Roaches are starting to die, and we're not going to spend any more gas, because we've already sort of declared that as an interesting and important thing to think about. So after the Roaches numbers start to get small, Snute gets double Evo Chamber. That's expensive on gas. Good thing we saved all that stuff up. Snute, you will see, doesn't have any extra geysers but those 2. So it's very important that he, in fact, saves gas during this attack. Drones continue to go down, but the unit rallies don't stop. all those backup units that were made. We saw 2 workers killed at the start of this. I think we're going to see like 18, 20, something like that, when this fight is done. If you zoom into this really closely, which you can do because all the IEM Toronto replays are publicly available, if you look at those really, really closely, you can see that Snute only really spends like 1.5 cycles of units as reinforcements for this attack. Here is the moment where it's easy to delude yourself into thinking, oh, if Snute had only built more roaches, or morphed more banelings, or continued to pressure. If only he had done that. Totally wrong. No need for Snute to do this because he's gotten wildly ahead in the worker count. And the only way workers are strong is if you wait. The more you wait, the more money those drones collect, the bigger the lead you have. So that's just great. Just great stuff from Snute. In the meantime, getting all these extractors, not getting him too fast, only when he goes back to massive droning. So in this position, I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, Flash has to bank on upgrades. That's the usual play. He's getting more of the basic unit-producing structures. Not going to analyze that in gross detail. Whoa, Snute's got to get up a layer so he can begin to get the up, because, man, those medevacs are going to be pesky. And if I'm Flash, I'm thinking, man, these medevacs have to do a lot of work, keeping the Zerg player pinned back, trying to deal damage. Smart moves from Flash. Notice that he flies over this expansion, flies over this expansion. And when I'm looking at Snute, that was one of the big things I was wondering. Snute, why are you not trying to get a 4th and 5th and all sorts of extra expansions faster? Not right now, of course. Now is a perfectly reasonable time not to take that base, because you've just been droning for a little while. But as time goes on, typically what we see out of a Zerg player is just expand, and then a quick expand, and then a quick expand, and then more expansions, and just flooding with Zergling, Baneling, Mutalisk. So here we see very interestingly from Flash, if we take a look at production, or excuse me, what's the tab? Structures. Only 4 barracks. Instead favoring this one factory more quickly getting Hellbats. The typical structure of buildings is 5 getting bio and 1 getting mine. Here, it's a little different, much more Hellbat heavy. Hellbats, by the way, are very, very expensive on minerals. They're quick to build. And they cost a lot of resources. I think Widow Mines are half the time. Is it 30 and 40? Alright, excuse me there. 3/4 of the time. So cool. Flash is taking himself another base. Flash is harassing in the meantime. But look at this. Flash getting this attack upgrade. Not only is he low on barracks, but his next structure is a factory. He is not getting nearly the amount of bio that other players get. Now, many people will look at this and go, oh yeah, Hellbat Marine. Pfft. Standard stuff. But there's some pretty notable differences in that composition of buildings there. Obviously this helps with Zergling counterattacks, but we're going to see it function more in a main army sense in a little bit. So, okay, I'm looking at this game and I'm like, alright, Snute's back to normal. He should probably get a macro hatch at some time. He wants to be able to pump those Zergling Banelings out, right? He should really want to do that. Looking at this moment in the game made me realize another thing. Man, Flash has never stopped building medevacs. That's really expensive too. Many Terran players will emphasize bio and build some mines, build some medevacs, but mostly it's the bio. Here, it's mostly metal. Medevacs, Hellbats, and whatever Marines can be afforded. And there's not a lot of Marauders in this mix. It's mostly the Hellbats. So remember very early in the game when Snute broke through and caused the cancel? That's one of the great benefits that Flash gained by building no Hellions and getting that 3rd command center. That's how he's able to catch up on economy. And similarly, Flash has been able to do not direct damage of killing stuff off, but has managed to keep Snute pinned back, force these spore crawlers to get built. So here now is the money moment in the game that just fascinated me. I'm going to pause at 1645 because I like nice round numbers. Zooming out. What do we have here? We have 2 banelings. We have a muta pack, 16 mutas. We got some zerglings. They're sort of scattered around in various places. On the Terran side of things, we got a lot of Marines, a lot of medevacs. 9 is a lot for this point in the game. Some Hellbats. Look at this, we're getting Hellbat upgrades. So when I looked at this, I go, for all the wiggling and adjusting and tweaking that these players have done, now they've gone back and hit normalcy. Maybe you could talk about Flash's lack of mines as being a little unusual. The way he's doing is a little unusual, but it's not totally out of the question. It's not totally unseen. So cool. Very nice adjustment by Flash. And I'm looking at Snute, and I'm like, alright, cool. So yeah, you get your infestation pit, so you can get the hive up, so you can begin to get 3-3. But then, we see this. Missile attacks. What? Whoa! Huh. That's a little bit odd. Why would missile attacks be significant? This big force of Ling, Baneling, Muta is typically the core of Zerg. Maybe you begin to get Infestors, and maybe you begin to get Ultras. Maybe you even do some fancy stuff with Burrow. But this is your core army that fights against the Biomine. But Snute is going to be making a transition into Infestors against a composition that most people say you should not do that against. Oh my god, should you ever not do that. So I'm going to explain this without pausing, because I think Snute just does such a good job of showing it in motion. What's going to be happening is, in a normal game, these Mutalisks have to stay defensive. The Lings and the Banelings have to stay defensive. Everything has to stay pulled back, and sometimes you can pull off these sorts of counters with some effectiveness. Sometimes you can do this. The reason it's not all the time is that it can backfire miserably, and you, the Zerg player, can be left with no Banelings in your main army. You can screw yourself. So even though this army is considered great against Swarm Hosts, the Swarm Hosts buy enough time to let the Mutalisks, the Zerglings, and the Banelings commit heavily to counterattacking. Rather than needing the Mutalisks to stay at home to hold off the advances, the Swarm Hosts are the ones staying at home, holding off the advances, zoning the army. So, you might have to watch this a little bit slowly just to see it in action, but these Swarm Hosts are not crazy aggressive. Look, they're kind of moving nearby. There's some rallies here. They're kind of like zone control. And look at every single one of the forces is trying to gear up to do some sort of countering. Where are the Mutalisks? Well, they're on the right side, also eager to do a counter. So of course when Hives hit, Snute gets the Zergling upgrade. That's great. Of course he's going to get continued upgrades. No reason not to do that. But look at the rest of what's going on. Mutalisks being added on. Oh, he's not stopping. He's not committing to max Swarm Hosts. There's 12 of them. There's just some of them. And now all the rest of these dudes can do counterattacks. Now, what would be the problem if the Terran army showed up where the rest of the Zerglings aren't? Oh, well look at that. Swarm Hosts rally one way. Zergling counterattack army moves another way. So in this way, Snute, these are almost like scouts, shoving everything back. So we see Snute just changing the direction. These go one way, the counterattack force goes another way. Army just wrecks through the Locust, right? You should be saying right. But once the Zerglings and the Banelings can get into position and can see this, I mean, these really exploit the Terran's tendency to split some units away, split some units away, split some units away. I mean, look at this. Snute pulls his stuff back. We have some small clusters of stuff, and the locusts are like, dude, great, seems great. These Mutalisks, Snute had plenty of time to make a judgment call and to pull away. Plenty of time to make a judgment call and pull away, and he judged himself to be relatively okay. Alright, nice. What's really good against Swarm Hosts is generally to be clustered and to shove forward quickly, which makes, as we see, Zerglings and Banelings really strong. And when Flash attempts to engage, Snute's already killed off this expansion, just chilling here. Very unique style from Snute. And after he gets 12 Swarm Hosts, quite frankly, he just goes back to Ling, Baneling, Muta in this game. Really cool. And gets the GG. So I really like this as a starting game because it's showcasing something that's not wildly crazy. It's just Ling, Baneling, Mutalisk, throw in 12 Swarm Hosts. What happens? And we see that it yields some pretty cool opportunities for the Zerg player. Similarly from Flash, we're seeing this Marine Hellbat force rather than a Marine Mine force, which is a little unusual given that mines were just buffed for Terran. So when we come back, we're going to do games like 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of quickly moving ahead. And we're going to see some just cool things and different things because the games were a little different. But I like this one. I like the coolness of the Swarm Hosts in it. So when we come back, we're going to do exactly what I just said.